Thank you. Okay, so we will be recording this meeting. So good morning. We're going to be talking today about teaching equitably online, specifically talking about syllabus design. And I am Professor Kennison. I will be leading you through this today. Here are the topics we're going to cover. And if this isn't clear to you at all, you can just email us at media@ceils.ucla.edu. We will have some limited consultation hours. You need to make an appointment with us. And at the end of this workshop, we are going to give you a quiz, a little test, just to see how much you've learned. Next slide, please. All right, so for those of you who know CEILS, that is not exactly how we would start a workshop. But we wanted to give you a sense of what that might feel like. And now we're going to really start our workshop the way that we would normally start, which is to welcome you all warmly to our Teaching Equitably Online syllabus design workshop today. And let you know that we will, of course, I'll give you all of our slides afterwards, and our resources, of course, will all be on our website. So today, I want to introduce our team who will be guiding us through this workshop today. We all worked on this together collaboratively to create this material and to bring it to you today. Whoops. Lost the slide, Katie. There we go. And of course, we first want to acknowledge our presence on the tradition and ancestral and unceded territory of the Gabrielino and Tongva peoples, our virtual presence on the land, on UCLA's land, from the Gabrielino and Tongva peoples. And so I'm Rachel Kennison. I'm the interim director of CEILS, the Center for Education, Innovation, and Learning in the Sciences. We are a STEM center for teaching and learning, and very happy to be here with you today. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Our team that's with us today are Shauna Shaked, a senior associate director of CEILS. And my background, by the way, is in marine science. Shauna is a physicist. Katie Dixie is our assistant director for CEILS, and she is also in life sciences. And then we have three amazing graduate students who've been working with us all summer. Kiana Fox, who's a grad student in organizational change and higher ed. Ben Ha, who's a PhD candidate in EEB. Sammy Mensah, who's a PhD candidate in materials chemistry. And then we have Jenny Casey, who is a chemistry instructor and has been working with us as well all summer. So we're lucky to have them here today. We will have Sammy will be one of the grad students who will be joining us a little bit later. Next slide. There we go. So today, what we're going to cover, these are our learning outcomes. This is what we want you to be able to do by the end of the workshop. So you'll be engaging in reviewing your syllabus with an equity-minded approach. So we're going to talk more about what that means. You'll identify the many purposes of a syllabus, including messaging to your students. You'll reflect on the meaning of an equity-minded syllabus, identify and apply ways to have a welcoming tone and inclusive language. So you'll apply those ways to do that in your own syllabus. Utilize the equity-minded syllabus tool, which we're going to go through with you, to create a syllabus that is a guide for students from all backgrounds on how to succeed in your class. And investigate key syllabus components and reflect on ways to make your syllabus and your course more equitable. And we'll specifically focus on how to do that in the remote environment.
Okay, and I do want to say there will not be a quiz at the end. That was joking around in the beginning.
We were trying with a little levity at the beginning.
So we want to talk about what does it mean to teach equitably to begin with. And on the next slide, we have this cartoon that would show us how historical and current cultural norms bend this tree of opportunities towards certain groups. So what we have now is a state of inequality or disparities, where certain people have access to resources more readily than others. And when we treat all our students equally, we're giving them all the same support structures or tools. but that's still leading to unequal access to resources and opportunities. And that's in the equality one. And so equity is this idea of customizing tools and identifying ways to address that inequality so that everyone's getting more equal access to these resources and opportunities. And of course, what we all want to aim for, even better, is justice, where we're helping to push that tree back so that everyone has more equal access to opportunities. We wanted to ground that. That's what we mean when we're talking about equitable. Thank you. Why are we focusing this workshop on equity? Well, this comes from the USC Center for Urban Education, their syllabus review guide that we'll be referring to, that with few exceptions, historically Black colleges and universities being the most notable, higher education institutions were founded and designed to serve the people who were able to attend them back then, which were white students who were particularly male, middle to upper class, heterosexual, able-bodied, and Christian. And despite the increasing diversity of the American college student population, many of our policies and practices in higher ed haven't yet been reconfigured to equitably support, affirm, and validate students from underrepresented groups in STEM. And there's a lot of data on this. We include just one reference on the double bind of being a woman of color in STEM, for example. And then the last point is that we as instructors can affirm the belonging of underrepresented students in higher ed, for example, by representing their experiences in course materials, among other things. And so one of the things we'll talk about in the syllabus workshop is getting at that. So we have a poll for you. My first poll is to think about how often do you revise your syllabus? And I can make that. Let's see, Rachel, could you make that poll appear? Oh, great, it already is appearing.
Should be
so,
appearing.
Yeah, it's appearing. So all of you can indicate how often do you revise it? Never, or do you make small revisions each time you teach? Or like each quarter that you teach? Do you make significant revisions each quarter? Or do you make revisions in the middle of the quarter? Just to check in. And Rachel, can you let me know? I'm not able to.
Yeah, so we have about 75% who voted. We don't have multiple answers on this one, sorry.
So pick the one that most closely resembles your answers. Yeah. The one that's most frequent, the most frequent one.
Yeah. You can put your multiple answers in the chat if you would like to.
Yes, all right. And for anybody who wants to use Zoom polling in their own class, you can set it to accept multiple answers. We just didn't put this one. So why don't we show the poll results, which is,
yep.
If you could show that. Yeah, great. Okay, so a lot of people make small revisions before each quarter that they teach. And then a few people make significant revisions and some make their revisions while teaching. Okay, so then we're gonna talk a little bit about what kind of revisions we can make and why we might want to make more revisions. So on the next slide, we're going to think about what is a syllabus for and why bother to examine and revise it. So the next slide shows us what we can see a syllabus as, right? The course syllabus functions as a travel guide, indicating the territory to be covered on a journey from the first day of class to the final exam, the resources needed for the trip, and the traffic rules that must be observed along the way. So if we see a syllabus as that, then it's critical to the students, to their success, to know all of that information. And some of you might be wondering, though, what percentage of students actually look at the syllabus? And so our next poll, which is also one answer only, can you indicate what percentage of the students do you think read your syllabus after the first week? And I'm going to hand this over to Jenny, actually.
Still waiting for.
Yeah, we have about 75% so far. Waiting for a few more.
More refer to your syllabus, not just read, but actually use it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have about 80%, 85% voted.
All right. Do you want to end the poll?
Sure, I'm ending the poll.
Okay, so the most common answer is C. You all are much more generous than me. I've definitely had many experiences where I've sat across from friends and, you know, was quite exasperated by how many times I felt like I had to repeat what was in the syllabus. And as an instructor, it can oftentimes feel like students don't necessarily use the course syllabus, especially beyond the early weeks of class, or maybe they just ignore it altogether. But this perception is just actually not accurate. And one study, can we switch slides? Yeah, the study here by Calhoun and Becker, that found that 80% of students actually report viewing the syllabus even during the second half of the term. And so the syllabus isn't necessarily just for us as instructors. The students apparently think the syllabus is important too. We may just have different purposes when we approach the syllabus. And that kind of leads us to our next question. Shauna.
Yeah, which is, we're going to use a feature in Google Slides, so we'll also model things, but there's a link that is appearing at the top and that I think will also appear in your chat. And so we want you to think about what are some of the purposes of the syllabus, and then enter that at this link. I think Katie is working on putting that link in the chat. Yeah, Katie, you need to right click and copy. Okay. But anybody who wants to type it right off the screen can also do that. And what you'll see when you click on that link is a Q&A that'll let you ask or say what you think the purpose is, and then upvote the ones that you agree are the purpose. And Katie, let's at least show them the question a little longer while they're working on it. Okay, awesome. So what are some of the purposes of the syllabus? This is great. And so anybody who's clicked on that link, you'll see what Katie sees on her screen. And so we can see, and you can see the upvoting and downvoting, and then you can also even refresh it on your screen if you want to see. So how the final grade is determined. A lot of people are thinking that's that's a main purpose of the syllabus. And we could see providing a guide for what to expect in the class, letting students know what you hope they will learn from the class, clarifying expectations, defining expectations, showing what topics will be covered, knowing when the exams are, and seeing a lot of kind of like logistical stuff, and then also being a guide and helping to provide students the important information they need. What will I be learning in the course? A lot of people are putting that. To give students an outline for the week, right? Warnings against cheating or plagiarism, so noticing academic dishonesty and what are the consequences, establishing rules. Okay, outline of assignments. Yeah, I think you're capturing a lot of the key purposes that we see in a syllabus. So we can go back to the slides and highlight some of the ones that came out of there that are called learner-centered goals for a syllabus. And so a more learner-centered syllabus requires most of us to shift from what we, the instructor, are going to cover in our course to a concern for what information and tools the students need to promote their learning and intellectual development. And so the idea here is that we're communicating that learning is a partnership with the students. So getting at what you all said about it's a guide, providing rationale for the course objectives and assignments relevant to student needs. So what you all put of like communicating to the students what you want them to learn, but also explaining why they want to learn that themselves. Warning them of potential pitfalls and providing recommendations for staying on track. And considering, throwing it out there, allowing the students to have some say in their course policies and procedures, right? Because our typical kind of instructor-centered one is, I'm going to tell them the rules, but a learner-centered one is where you can make space, see where they can have some say in the policies or procedures. Okay, on the next slide, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel.
Yeah, so what we'd like to do now is go through an ideal or a model syllabus. And the point of doing this is really to inspire you. We understand that, nobody's going to have the perfect syllabus and that this is all a work in progress. And the idea here is to get ideas and to generate inspiration, and for this to really just be a resource for you to use. So we're going to go through this tool and have you look through this model syllabus. So we have a link that should be in the chat. Yep, there you go. So you can click on that link, and it's a long syllabus, so take your time. We'll give you about 5 minutes, and you can just go through this and look at all the different ways that they have worded things and different examples they have, and then we're going to have more time to go through this in detail, but we want to give you 5 minutes just to get an overview. Let us know if you can't access the syllabus. We'll take about 1 more minute, and then we'll come back together. Okay, So we are going to, our next activity is going to go into breakout rooms. And we're going to ask you in your breakout rooms to have different roles. And so you'll need a facilitator, a recorder, and a timekeeper in each of your breakout rooms. And the way to identify those people will be by alphabetical order. So the facilitator will be the person whose name comes first alphabetically. And they will start the conversation, read the instructions on the activity guide, which we'll show you in a minute, and make sure everyone gets to talk. The recorder will come second alphabetically, and they will write notes on the conversation and the note taker document. And then the timekeeper, who will be the third person who comes alphabetically, will pay attention to the time and keep the conversation on track as well. You can always get help from us, and we'll be in the main room. Some of us will be rotating through, but you can ask for help, and we can pop into the room to see how it's going, and let you know, and let us know if you have any questions, and we can respond to those. Katie, did you want to go through? Yeah.
So a question in the chat was first or last name. So we're going to do first name. So your first alphabetically first name and second. And we'll be rotating through these roles. So everyone will hopefully get a chance to play one of them. So we're going to go into our breakout room. And what we did is we assigned each room a different page to look at in particular. And so first, what we want you to do is when you go into your breakout room is to introduce yourselves, because you're going to be in the same room for the rest of the workshop. And then after that, I want you to look at the page that's assigned to your room, and I'll show you how to find that in a second. And look at that page and really think about how it's achieving some of these goals that we mentioned, and particularly the student-centered ones. And then also to think about what the page reveals, any kind of additional goals that maybe didn't come out. And then maybe think about what it might be like to read the syllabus if you were a student, maybe from a different background or an underrepresented group, or maybe a first-time college student. And what might you appreciate coming at this syllabus as somebody from a different background? So I'm going to walk you through the Google Doc or the activity guide that we have for you and how you can do this activity. First, I want you, when you're in your breakout room, to pay attention to the room number you're in, because this will determine where you take your notes. So we have an activity guide. It looks like this, and you can jump to each breakout room session by clicking the link here. So breakout room 1, you'll find the description of the roles. So first assign your roles, and then here are the instructions. And then depending on what room number, because we have a lot of people here and you can only have so many people writing in a Google Doc at once, you can click on the one, either rooms 1 through 10, 21 through 30, and so on. So then down here is a space for you to take notes. So the recorder, the person who's the recorder for that role, will take notes here. And you can find the page that you're assigned to based on your group number here. You can click that. And there we go. Are there any questions about this? I know Google Docs can get a little confusing, or activity guides, and so hopefully, I'm going to put the link in the chat here. Hopefully this will help make it a little bit simpler. So if a person can't fulfill certain roles, yes, absolutely. So letting people choose, of course, you can always pass if you're not comfortable with a certain role or you're not able to do so. So certainly feel free to do that. This is just a guide to get conversations started so that you don't spend 5 minutes trying to figure out who's going to do what. But of course, definitely having the option to choose. Thank you.
So you'll see the breakout room number when you go into your breakout room. It'll be right at the top of your screen, and that will tell you which group you're in. Are we ready?
Yeah, in 1 second.
Okay, Sean is working on it.
Because some people heard they were going to have to go to breakout rooms and have roll and then left.
Yep.
So, but now we're good. Now we're good. So I'm going to zoom you all off and I'll see you all in 12 minutes.
All right. So, remembering to do that. Okay, so hopefully you got a chance to look through those pages, get a sense of a model, an inspiration, way to do things. We're gonna return to that syllabus, so don't feel like it's your last chance. So we'd like you to now think about the content and style of the syllabus specifically. And first, enter your thoughts in the chat, and you can respond to one or both of these questions. The first question is, why are the content and style of syllabi important, particularly for underrepresented students? And the other question is, what are the benefits to having an equitable syllabus? So considering the definition of equity, what do you think are the benefits to having an equitable syllabus? So you can go ahead and enter your thoughts in the chat. Okay. So question about the definition of an equitable syllabus. And I think what we mean by that is that the syllabus communicates that all students will be able to have equal access to opportunities to achieve the learning outcomes in your class. So does the syllabus actually communicate that? There are lots of different ways to make your syllabus equitable, so hopefully by the end of the workshop that will be clear. Style is confusing. Content and style can determine the kinds of learners and access to the course. All students feel welcomed and cared about. So these are some great ideas. Yeah, and Anne says an equitable syllabus to make sure that all students feel they're welcome and the class feels they're equally able to succeed. So you all can look through these comments. You all have some really good insights here.
So I want to just make a quick note that these are just the first few pages of a longer syllabus. So this is an excerpt from a syllabus. So I think the other pages had more details about the specifics of the course content. So I just wanted to give that little explanation there.
Where we're going. Thanks, Katie. Okay, great job. All right. Next slide. Great. So we're now going to reflect a little bit about what it means to have an equity-minded syllabus. And so specifically, when we're thinking about equity-mindedness, you can go to the next slide, Katie. Thanks. So the syllabus is your first and most important message to your students, right? So it is their first view of you and what your beliefs are, your values, and your worldviews that you hold, not only of you, but also of your institution. And sometimes we take this for granted, that these ideas and these thoughts may seem very obvious to you, but they're not necessarily obvious to your students unless you explicitly state them, and you do that in a way that's very supportive. So your syllabus can be that, you know, the first moment where your students understand your norms and rules that you are valuing in your classroom. And in particular, how to better support students from underrepresented groups. So this, of course, is even more critical in the remote environment where we know the inequities are amplified even more. So as a gateway, the syllabus really can either appear to open or shut that door, right? It can, that communication about how, not only your ideas and your values, but how you communicate allows students to get a message immediately about whether or not that door is open, and it's easy to walk through it. So clarifying logistics, for example, what's going to be synchronous, what's going to be asynchronous, how they might know what their grade is and how often they will know that, and their progress, and how they're going to engage with you as well as how they're going to engage with others. So clarifying that is a critical piece in that communication, and being very explicit about that, and helps them feel connected to you. The lack of awareness of inequities increases the probability of amplifying those. So the more that you're clear about what those inequities are, the easier it will be for you to address them, and less chance that those inequities will be amplified.
Okay, at this point, people might be wondering, why should I put all this time into a syllabus? Are they going to read it that carefully to even notice all of this? And so we want to, on the next slide, give you some ideas or ask you questions. And we're going to use the Annotate tool here for you all to indicate, do you plan to have any ways to help the students get the most out of your syllabus? You're going to put all this work into it. How can you help them benefit from all that? And so if you go to View Options at the top of your screen, and then find Annotate under that menu, you can start putting a stamp next to the ones that you plan to do. Great. And if you're not sure how to do this, you can ask in the chat. We have some great helpers. And what we're seeing a lot of is a lot of people plan to go over it on the first day of class. And that is a key step. For anyone who's seen the data on active learning, we really need to, we as teachers need to engage with the material, which is why you're in breakouts, and your students probably need to engage with it too. So we want to encourage anybody who wants their students to actually read the syllabus carefully to think about another option as well, to make it or somehow turn it into an active one. So one thing people do on the first day is have a syllabus scavenger hunt where the students themselves are looking for what you want to present. So thinking about transitioning can be helpful. Okay, but that's great. So this is for everybody to see everybody else's ideas. If there's something that you do that's not on here, please enter it in the chat, which is what I'm seeing. And think about what else you can do. This is not all inclusive. And Kirsten is pointing out a really good point that a lot of students don't come to the first day for a variety of reasons. They might switch in later. And so having any other activity that they can do on CCLE that gets them up to speed with what you did on that first day can really be more equitable, among other things. Thanks, Kirsten. Okay. We're ready to move to the next slide. Katie, over to you.
Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how we can use this equity-minded syllabus tool that we mentioned to really think about how we can turn our syllabi and create a syllabus into something that's a guide for our students and provides that welcoming and useful structure. So just a little bit of a background of where we got some of these tools that we're using today. For example, the syllabus example we shared with you. This is from USC Equity-Minded Syllabus Tool, which is a really great resource, even though it comes out of USC. They are good for some things. No, just kidding. But so this is done by Estella Mara Benenson, and she's a professor of higher education there. And we're going to go through a couple of the activities today. But if you really want to learn more and delve into changing your syllabus and really adapting it, we highly recommend that you go and look through this tool after. Because there's a lot of reflection activities and other things you can do on your own, and it walks you through this very nicely. So there's kind of 3 essential language components that are highlighted in this tool that we think are very important for having your students feel welcome in your class. And the first is to have a welcoming tone. So having a tone, some content, and where you're really communicating that you care and you're going to support and respect inclusion as your classroom norm, and so that you are there for your students, that they are welcome in your class. Demystifying is another type of language component that you might want to include, or is important to include, especially for first-time college students, for example. But just in general, information they know they need to know in order to successfully complete the course. And be very plain and clear about it without much jargon. And then the third is that we're going to talk about today is validating. So having a tone and content that communicates a belief in a student's ability to succeed. So these are a few different components, and we're going to go through a few examples of these. So we have a little activity where I want you to look at this statement. That's an excerpt from a common syllabus, and to think about whether or not this feels welcoming or unwelcoming. So if you go to your participant panel, if you click the button that says participants, if you go there, you should see these 3 dots, and if it's welcoming, give a thumbs up. And if it's not welcoming, give it thumbs down. And I haven't been reading the chat, but let's see.
Katie, I'm monitoring it. I'll let you know.
Okay, all right.
Just wonderful ideas about syllabi in the chat, but for folks who don't like to multitask, you don't need to be following the chat.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I'm seeing several thumbs downs. Looks like someone who had a thumbs up switched it. Okay, a couple thumbs up, that's good. Okay. And let me know if you're having trouble finding this button. Okay. So if you go to participants, it should be maybe a button on either the bottom or the top of your screen. It looks like 2 people, and it has the number 74 on it. You click that button, okay, and then you'll see this. Okay, all right, thank you. So it looks like most people are saying not so welcoming, but a lot of people are saying, some people are saying that it is. Well, we think maybe it's a little bit more unwelcoming, where there's an option where you can just change the wording just a little bit to make it feel a bit more welcoming. If you need to contact me outside my office, you can email me. I welcome you to contact me outside of my office. You may email me. And so this is like a very small change that just makes it slightly more welcoming. And this, again, is a very small example of one thing that you could do. This is kind of another example here. And so this might be on a common syllabus. Come prepared to actively participate in the course. This is the best way to engage, and it makes learning more interesting.
And I do want to point out, I think we're treating these as dichotomous, but of course it's more like less welcoming or more welcoming, and thinking about it that way.
Yes, thank you, Shauna. Very good point. Okay, so I'm seeing some half and halves. Almost exactly half and half. Okay. So people are saying it seems more welcoming. It's certainly a little more welcoming than the last one. I wouldn't say it's completely unwelcoming. Like Shauna said, it's maybe on a spectrum, but here's maybe another way that you could phrase this that really invites students to understand why you want them to participate on a bigger level, especially if people can't, right? So thinking about the responsibility you have to your peers, all of us in the class, you, me, your peers, including the instructor, have a responsibility to create an environment in which we can all learn from each other. I expect everyone to participate so that we can benefit from the insights and experiences that we all bring. And so this is just a slightly different way to word this that is, again, more inviting and maybe welcoming to students so that they really understand why you're requiring participation. So there are a few examples that came out of this tool, and we will share this with you of a couple other ways that you can change maybe slightly more unwelcoming wording into something that is more welcoming to your students as they come into the class. So one of the things about the language and the welcoming tone here is thinking about how you organize your syllabus also. You can organize it to be more welcoming or not. So here's an example of a syllabus that's maybe a bit more typical, where you see the date that something will be covered, the topic that will be covered in that date, what's required for the readings, and whatever assignments there. But in this particular syllabus, it's very content focused, right? The focus is the content and what they'll be doing in that class. In a learner focused syllabus, it gives the exact same information, but in a learner-centered way. So yes, you have the date, but here questions and themes will explore. And so this is something that the students will learn as opposed to just a topic. How you'll prepare for the discussion, not just the readings, but here are the readings you do, and reminders as the assignments, things that you need to do for the class. So these are just kind of small ways with this little bit of what you'll be doing in the class. This makes it more learner-centered and really focused on the student, whereas this one is really just on the content. And so again, this can be a lot more welcoming in tone. So the reason why we share that with you is this is from a book with some of the quotes from there when they ask students about content-focused syllabus. Students tend to think that the instructor is very harsh from this reading the syllabus, is either isn't there to help or understand the needs of their students, or are very cold or strict or unfriendly and unapproachable. But in this learner-focused syllabus, students seem to think that the instructors are more approachable, more encouraging for their students, really intended that they're going to be helping them and help them learn the material. And so even if this isn't true, maybe you are this type of professor or this instructor, if you have a content-focused syllabus and your students read that before they see you, they might get this very strict impression of you before they even start your class. So this is a way to kind of get them on board to show them that you are an approachable instructor. Here are also some examples of validating and demystifying language that you might use. And so for our validating example, remember, learning is a process that requires work. I truly believe that everyone in this class will be able to excel, and I will be here to help support you through this process. Whereas a demystifying example might be, I've recorded the majority of my lectures for you to watch on your own time. That said, I recommend that you create a designated time each week to watch them. And this can help with scheduling and time management so you can stay on track to participate in class discussion sections and avoid last-minute cramming. And so in this one, it's kind of elucidating how you might navigate an online environment where you have asynchronous lectures. And so that kind of just reiterates the importance right now, especially of demystifying the remote learning environment, because students aren't as used to this environment right now. So thinking about how to give examples or advice on how you might be able to succeed in a remote environment, providing your students resources that they can go to, especially for mental health and well-being, which is a big issue right now. Thinking about guidance with time management, that is a big thing that students have struggled with lately, where to get help for technical problems, and how to participate in class if they can't come to a synchronous session. So these are a few things that you may want to try to include in your syllabus, especially right now, to really help demystify this experience for folks. And so really thinking about what some other ways are that you might want to do that. So with that, we're going to take a little break, and we will be here and be able to address some of these questions in the chat. Shauna, did you?
I think that the chat is going well. Yeah, so okay. I think that we can take our break, but if anybody has something in the chat that didn't get addressed, we can elaborate on it. And we do want you all to know that after the break, we're going to practice making the language more welcoming, and then actually have a big chunk of time for you to work on your own syllabus, and we can be popping around and helping you with that. So it's a hands-on workshop. Okay, thank you, Katie. I am saying, we want to encourage everyone to take the break. And Greg, I see that you asked a great question about strictness in the chat. So I wanted to see if you want to discuss that further. We're happy to. But if you want to stretch and take your break, that's fine too.
Well, my point was only that, you know, I'm strict in the sense of I say, you know, you can't turn in things late, and I expect you, you know, to be there for the exams, and I'm very clear about what constitutes a valid excuse for not doing something that they're going to be graded on, and not necessarily going into all the things that don't, because that would certainly be mean. But I mean, from my perspective, part of the purpose of the syllabus is to create structure so that students have really clear understanding of what the expectations are, since many of them do care about what their grade is, right? And then it gives them an opportunity to know what they should and should not do in order to actually not fall afoul of things like missing an exam or not turning something in that would certainly hurt them. So by strict, that's why I said perceptions aside, right? Being perceived as being strict is different than being strict. And, you know, I've had many cases where I've tried to be accommodating, and then I end up being swamped by, you know, excuses and questions and things where I don't, you know, then I have to tell people no. Right? Anyway, that's what's worse, later telling them no or not seeming like the expectations are really clear at the beginning with regard to grading.
You're revealing a hard balance, right? But it's not like, it's hard to find a right answer. I mean, I think there is a difference, somebody put in the chat, a difference between clear expectations and strict. So I think
high expectations is what they said, which is different.
There's a second chat. Everybody's chatting about your great question, Greg. So somebody else said. So yeah, that you can have clear and high expectations. I think in a way that doesn't sound strict, and it might be that you might express what you just said, Greg, right? Of like, I understand things come up, so I want to be very clear about what the expectations are and what the consequences are, because things come up. So I want to be clear about, you know, what is excused and what's not. And then you sound like more like, I'm on your side. I know things might come up, so here's a very clear outline of that, rather than you are required to do this or else. If that, not that I'm saying you do that, Greg, but that distinction, does that make some sense? Or,
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Rachel, if you were going to chime in, let me, I don't know.
No, I'm just agreeing with you. I mean, I think that it is all about the tone in a way, and, you know, letting them know that, yeah, that you have some empathy, but at the same time, you also have high expectations, and here, you know, and being very clear about what they are, will help students know where they stand and what they need to do to achieve the outcomes in your class, like making it very clear. I want you all to achieve. I want you all to do well. I want you all to, you know, succeed. Here's what I expect in order for you to be able to do that. I also understand that, you know, particularly in this environment, things come up. And so the lines of communication are open, right? And so making sure they understand that they can approach you. I think that the key is that if students feel like you're unapproachable, then they're going to quietly fail, or they're going to quietly cheat, or they're going to quietly, you know, do whatever they can to get around whatever they have to get around to be able to achieve it without communicating with you, right? And so I think that's what I would think would be part of the key, is that you are accessible and approachable.
And more practically, Rana put in the chat that they do let students drop a certain percentage of like quiz or assignment grades to reduce the emails. Because you're saying like, if I am flexible, I get flooded with messages. And so it's more like, if you have a strict, you know, or concrete expectation that they can drop X percentage, you don't get flooded with emails and you're still kind of flexible. But obviously you need to decide where and how to do that. That's balance too.
It is.
These don't have easy answers. So Greg, I appreciate you bringing up these kind of more challenging questions.
Totally.
Larger classes too, making sure your TAs are on the same page with you. and they can also help with, dealing with a bunch of emails coming in because they have probably smaller classes that they're working with. So that might also be another way to mitigate that a little bit.
Great. And we're welcoming everybody back from the break to get ready for our next breakout. And we do want to say that in these breakouts, if we can go to the next slide, Katie, we are modeling things that you can try in your class. And you can experience them and decide if you want to keep them or not. That's your choice, but just to explain why we're putting all this structure in as well. So in the next breakout, we wanted you to review examples of syllabus language, and then as a group, try to rewrite that language. And we're going to ask you to rotate your roles. So whoever was facilitator becomes recorder becomes timekeeper, etc. And then you should have instructions on your Google Doc about that language. And so that'll be a 10-minute breakout. Then we'll come back and then you can actually revise your syllabus. And we'll be around to help you with these more detailed questions.
And again, for rotating roles, this again is just a guide. So if you are not comfortable with the role or are unable to do so, no problem, just with your group. We may also be switching up the group just a teeny bit. So if you're in a new group, that is why, but hopefully we'll mostly be with the same people.
Exactly. Welcome your new member if you've got one.
Yes.
Okay, and we'll see you all in 10 minutes.
The reason why I put this up there was to try to remind myself to resume recording.
Yes.
The reason I turned it off, just for anyone who's unfamiliar, when you go into a breakout room and you're the one recording, it will start recording the breakout room. So I turned it off to be less abrupt if I visited your room. So thank you for reminding.
Okay, thank you. Yes. And Katie said, I always forget to record. And I'm like, well, let's model what faculty can do because they're also going to forget to resume recording. Okay, so what I'm seeing in the chat is one person says that was more challenging than we thought. Yeah, right. And there was a lot to do on how best to write the access to technology section. Okay, so some of these things it seemed like might have been more straightforward or less straightforward. You can look through, the nice thing about these Google Docs is you can look through the work that other people did for you in terms of reframing them. And yeah, right. I'm looking at this and just seeing like the use of technology is to help build classroom community is one I like, right? You're explaining the rationale. So rather than saying, please ensure that you have adequate technology and access to internet, not having it is no excuse for not participating, thinking about, okay, so let's explain to them how this benefits their learning. That's the theme here. And then Gaston pointed out it's challenging to rephrase statements into I and you sentences. Yeah, I mean, as academics, right, we've got like, what is it, the passive voice down? And right, and that's not usually as engaging. And so trying to go into the I and you can be challenging. And then I love that Chris said we stole some language from the example syllabus. Yes, and I think that's fine. Like we all want to give credit where and how it's appropriate. But when you see language that you like, yeah, adapt it. Okay. Great. So we're going to go on to the next slide, which this is what we were discussing during the break. So we want to talk about some considerations for breakout rooms. First, what we are learning and happy to share with you is that we definitely should have and in the future will explain the purpose of breakout rooms and roles. So studies find that we all learn more and feel greater community when we actively engage with the materials. And roles help us build the skills and stay engaged and be more equitable. And especially for your students, right? Everybody falls into their normal roles. Like, oh, okay, I'll just go take the notes. Oh, I'll just present. But if we want students to graduate with different sets of skills, then giving them different roles can help them build that. We also want to recognize that most of us, myself included, don't always feel as if breakouts are as helpful as just listening to an expert tell us what to do. And so we're hoping you're getting to experience that when you talk with others, you're working through your own decision making so that you can apply it to your syllabus, because we can't answer every single question for you. But your students will be in the same, right? It's the active learning versus lecturing dilemma. And so helping them understand that is helpful. In the engagement part 2 group work session of this forum, we will dive deeper into these issues. So if you're seeing all this and you're like, how will I do this in my class, or it seems too hard, we'll kind of troubleshoot more of that. But we wanted to take a moment to point out that breakout rooms can feel either challenging in various ways. And I see that Chris has a question, and I'm keeping track of the time and wanting us to focus on the getting to the syllabus. But yeah, Chris, can you write it in the chat, because we can either respond in the chat or to the whole group. Thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Rachel.
All right, so we would like you to spend some time now examining and really thinking about your own syllabus. So what we want you to do on your own first is look through your syllabus and use the Q&A to submit an upvote, and that's what we were using before, questions that come up while you're reviewing your syllabus. So I think we'll have a link in the chat for that. But spend the next 7 minutes or so reviewing your syllabus, and then if you have a question, let us know, and you can look on the Google Q&A sheet. And if there are other questions that you see up there that you also want to get the answer to, just upvote it, and then we will answer the questions. But we want to give you some time to work individually right now on your own. Oh, and I need this is animated, Katie. The slide. There you go. So things to think about. So identify elements of your syllabus. Does it incorporate a welcoming tone? Is the language validating students from all backgrounds? If you were an underrepresented student, would you feel represented in your syllabus? Would you see yourself? And if you're a first-gen student, is it clear on how to succeed in this class? So specifically thinking about the types of skills that are needed in terms of time management, study skills, etc. And there's a nice link there to a PDF which reviews some of these strategies. And also note some places that could be adjusted to make your syllabus more equitable. So we're going to give you time to really work in a group on your syllabus, but for now, just take some notes and see where you might want to spend some more time adjusting. And there's a link in the chat now to enter any questions.
Yeah, I see a request to put the question prompts up again. So the slides.
Yes, and they can also be found on this activity guide on page 4, which I will put in the chat again as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Take about 2 minutes to wrap up your thoughts, and then we'll come together and answer some of the most upvoted questions, and then give you time to work in breakout rooms. Okay, we're going to come back together, but you'll get time to work on this in more groups and then ask for advice in your groups as well. So what I'm seeing on the Q&A, and please keep the questions coming, and it lets us see which are the most shared questions. This is another way of being equitable in your class, right? Instead of hearing from the person who's most likely to interrupt you to ask a question, we get to hear from the most common questions. So I see, how long should a syllabus be to be informational but still readable? Oh, this is definitely up for debate. But all I would say is that if or when it gets too long, then some sort of table of contents at the top so students can easily navigate it, right? The way that you would think of any good writing. So it could be that your syllabus is short and just links to a lot of other resources they need. That's one way to keep it short and welcoming and link to resources. Or it could be that it's very welcoming, but also with a clear guide to the syllabus itself, and then is very long. I haven't seen any evidence one way or the other about the size of the syllabus, but if anybody else wants to chime in, I welcome other people to share. Chris, did you want to add to that?
One thing I found was helpful, and this was in response to student comments, was to create a separate document that described in detail the course assignments. I think that takes up a lot of space, and after a while, students are just so fatigued by reading through a 12-page document that they stop reading. And the assignments are really important. They were going like, I really wanted to know more about the assignments, but it, after a while, just kind of blurred. Mm-hmm. So I just created a separate document for each assignment, describe like learning objectives and how you can succeed with this assignment, why we're doing this, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And I think that, Chris, you just also hit the nail on the head of like listening to your students, you know, so aim for it to be clear to your students, but then get student feedback on what's more and less clear. So yeah, I have like a 20-page syllabus that my students told me was too long. So I added the table of contents and I stopped hearing that it was too long once I added table of contents. But I've also moved assignments off to other links. So listening to that feedback. I'm going to answer one more question and then send you off into your breakout rooms. What about the distinctions between undergraduate and graduate course syllabi, and among the latter between larger masterclass levels versus graduate seminars? This is a detailed but well-liked question. So far, the principles that we're talking about apply all over, right? There's imposter syndrome and imposter phenomenon, all sorts of things in graduate school as well. So no matter what level you're teaching, you probably want to appear more welcoming than the average of us appears through a syllabus. But of course, obviously the structure might change. And actually in graduate course syllabi, it could be more graduate student led with more voice from them if you wanted to. That's my first thought at that. I also welcome anybody else to chime in on that one if you'd like. But the principles should stay the same. Okay. So I think that we are going to send you off into your breakout rooms, but there is, if you advance, yeah, there we go. There is an ask for help button that is at the bottom of your screen in your breakout rooms. And so Katie, Rachel, and I just kind of sit here in the main room waiting for people to ask us for help. We'll be bouncing around, but there's a lot of you. So please just call for help and someone can come help. And we're going to encourage you all to each take 3 to 5 minutes, because you've got 20 minutes, to discuss your plans and get feedback, right? You all are now learning a lot and very thoughtful. What elements are on your syllabus that you want to change to make it more equitable? What questions do you have? And then we'll ask you to record your group's biggest takeaway. So any questions before we send you off into your rooms again?
Before you go off, on the activity guide document, the instructions are here. And then you can use the same note taker, but just scroll down and you'll see where you can take your notes there. One other thing too, yes, you can share a screen in your breakout room, but one of you has to do it within your breakout room. We also have a bunch of other resources that we will link down at the bottom here, and we'll be posting our materials on the forum website. So for anyone who, that question keeps coming up. So for anyone who wants, that will be there at the end of the week, hopefully.
Okay. Okay, then we'll see you all in 20 minutes.
Oh,
And then we come.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Where's the ask for help thing? I missed that.
Once you're in you can't see it now. Once you're in your breakout room, you'll see an ask for help at the bottom of your Zoom screen.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you when you ask for help, Gaston. And then when we come back, we'll talk about a last few additional resources for you to methodically check each component of your syllabus. Okay, I will see you soon.
Awesome. Welcome back, everyone. So hopefully you all had some time to really focus on your own syllabus and think through some of these ideas and questions and think about ways that you might want to revise. So you can go to the next slide, Katie. I think we're all back. Yeah, who's that?
That's Sean just saying we're all back.
We're all back. Okay, great. So, of course, we will give you the link to this tool that you've been using for the syllabus review guide from the Center of Urban Education. And there are a lot more steps that they go through in this tool that you are welcome to go through. We didn't use all of it. So it's a really nice tool to, if you want to kind of go a little bit deeper into your interrogation of your syllabus and your revisions. And just to remember that developing your syllabus is an ongoing process, right? And it's a way that you can start this rapport with your students and really provide an opportunity to give and get feedback from them as you revise and refine your syllabus. Shauna, I think this is you.
Thank you. Yeah, for those looking just for more details on the syllabus components, we have on our CEILS syllabus tools site, which I put in the chat, these different options. If you have an existing syllabus, there's just a checklist. Did you include everything you want to include? We also have a template that you can just start building a syllabus with our template because it has sample language and probably more other things. There's a syllabus scavenger hunt for those of you who say, well, I put this in the syllabus, then ask students to find it in the syllabus, and then you'll know that they found it and talked about it. So we want to encourage you all to look at that as appropriate and needed for your own course.
And we want to thank you for coming. We have a few more workshops coming up. One of them is on assessment design, which is tomorrow at 10. And then later in the afternoon, we are doing an Engaging Students Part 1, which is an overview on synchronous and asynchronous tools, and will help with the specific tools that you might want to learn in terms of engaging your students. And then our Part 2, which is next week, is really focused on group work and really thinking about collaborative learning in the remote environment. We also have a Creating Community workshop, 2 of them actually next week, Tuesday and Thursday. So hopefully we will see you at our other workshops, and we'll stick around for a few minutes if anybody has any questions or comments, and good luck. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
And also at the bottom of this document, there are a bunch of these resources here that we shared with you in the chat, and I'll try to update those as well. And we will also be posting them on the forum website, and I'll follow up with an email.
Thanks so much. We'll stick around for questions. Yeah. I love George saying, my syllabus will never be the same. That's great.
As far as example language, we don't currently have one, but maybe we could get one up on our site at some point in the near future.
Example language for what? Sorry.
For the current moment. So like for how you would introduce the challenges and resources and stuff like that.
I think the EDI office also might have some language around that.
Yes, they do have language example.
Yeah, if I could jump in since I asked that question. One of the things we were discussing in our group was sort of how to modify a policy regarding late assignments, for example, or even attendance. You know, having surveyed my students, it seemed there seemed to be consensus on the value of synchronous classes. So we, you know, and in life before COVID, I really emphasized the, you know, the expectation and why. Well, you know, why that's useful beyond the classroom. So that demystifying thing. How that translates into this moment seems very complicated. Like, how do I still keep that goal and also acknowledge the realities, and how also does that translate into assessment, which I realize is maybe the topic of another workshop that is also about the syllabus, right?
Yeah.
So I was hoping to just cheat from a course from the summer.
Yeah, we'll definitely look for that.
We will. We'll look for it and try to add it to the activity guide if we find any, Sheva, and then, because yeah, we just don't have that yet. It's a great point.
I'm like looking at my syllabus from last quarter.
Oh, okay. Well, Katie is going to
Few.
share her syllabus with all of us.
Am I?
I don't know. Well, yeah, that's a great question, and we basically don't have an answer yet. But Sheva, we appreciate the pressure you're putting on us to find one.
I'm having trouble.
Invitation.
Yeah.
Francis?
Yeah. I'm having trouble downloading the first 44 pages of the syllabus.
Template?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for letting me know. I'll take a look at that.
Any suggestions how I do it, or is there, I haven't looked at the chat. Is there a link in the chat?
So do you mean
I need to come in and out a little bit.
Do you mean the CEILS syllabus template? You clicked on that and it was having trouble downloading?
There's a item called the syllabus. Oh, just a minute. I've got too many things open. I'm very sorry.
That's okay. While you're looking, I think Susan,
Okay.
you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you. This is my first time teaching undergrad, so it's sort of a general syllabus question, but it applies to everything we talked about today. Is it assumed that the first class is kind of a wash and that you're just going over the syllabus, introducing yourself, or is the information expected to be in that class? And it's just also so many people may miss that first class from what I've been hearing. So, but I guess we have the benefit online that they're actually being recorded, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a wash. I can cover content in that first class. Okay.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think it's like with all of these ideas, we want the overarching principle to be flexibility, right? And so that you have these expectations and you expect people to be there and you are very clear about that. And if you can't make it for whatever reason, and you can outline those reasons that you can anticipate, or you can ask students to email you and let you know why they might not be able to make it, then you'll have a backup, which is to have a recording so that they can watch it. Maybe they're in a different time zone. Maybe they don't have the bandwidth. Maybe they don't have a private place to be able to sit and interact online. You know, maybe there's too many people around. Whatever the reason is, they can let you know that and then give them the option to watch the recording. And maybe there's an activity.
But for the first class, though, so do I contact them before the first class or no?
Yeah, we advise you doing a pre-class
Oh.
survey for your students. So you can do a survey to find out, information about them. You can write them an email.
Get familiar with the way you talk. I need your permission to help.
I'm not sure. What is that? I don't know where that one came from.
So I was planning on doing a poll in the first class, but you're suggesting to do it before the first class.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and Susan, I just put in a one-page summary of CEILS teaching tips. We tried to distill it to one page, and it includes a link to a pre-quarter survey. So
fantastic.
Yeah, and it has like low, medium, and high time. So hopefully you're not overwhelmed. Like even if you can do that first row of tips, then that might help.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for these workshops.
Okay.
Thank you. It was fantastic. It was really fantastic. It was excellent.
Oh, wonderful.
I really revamped my syllabus.
Oh, good.
Fantastic. Okay, I see
Idan has his hand up.
Idan, but I also want to check in with Francis. Francis, if you want to did you want to let me know what you were trying to do still?
You're on mute. Francis, you're on mute. Francis, you're on mute. Idan, what's up?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good. It's good to see you.
This was so lovely. This was so inspiring. I want to change my syllabus so much. I'm gonna rewrite so many things. I love it. This is related to Susan's comment. It's just something that I was told. I haven't been able to do it because I'm not as inspired. But some people suggest during the first class or part of it to start with a story, either like a personal story or something. So my previous advisor teaches Intro to Brain Function, and she tells a story about a brain tumor of one of her friends and how it caused a very, very specific deficit, and it ended up being in a region that she discovered. And so through this story, she sort of covers all the big questions of the class. So it is content, but it's a way to sort of engage students and also cover the big issues. And then syllabus and assignments and all of that is the beginning of the second class.
I love that.
I was going to say this to Susan, but I wanted to get to your question, Idan, so this is perfect. Is like, if you can see your first class as an invitation, right, to the content in a way, and engagement. In physics, I usually show exciting demos and like how physics is connected to their world, right? And so it's all stuff they're going to see, so it feels connected, but it invites them to get excited about it, which is what you're saying. I think that's fantastic.
I think that might be a great way for us to also frame our engagement workshop when we start talking about what you would do on your first day, right? And have that be the framing, right? This is I love that, an invitation. This is what inspires you. This is what gets you excited about the content. This is how it relates to your real world. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you.
Okay, Francis is not muted, so I wanted to check Francis. You were muted before, so we couldn't hear you. Did you?
Oh, I'm still struggling away trying to get into looking at the chat room to see if I can find out. I just don't remember the name of it. It's the guide that people were looking at about syllabuses. It has a nice multicolored first page, and there's a thing that says download. And I clicked on the download, and it didn't seem to download. Then I clicked on another thing, and it downloaded pages 44 to the end, the appendix. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. So the syllabus, that tool is, you can download the appendix, but the tool itself is an interactive thing. It's like you go through the website. So it's not something that you can download the whole thing of. So what you probably downloaded was the appendix, which has some resources in terms of education research that backs up a lot of the recommendations they have. But the tool itself is something that you can work through on your own time. And so
how can I bring it up in my own time? How do I get later access to it?
Sure.
When I don't have 5 other things going on at the same time distracting me.
So if you go to the website, you hit begin exploring, and you put in your name and stuff, which I've already done. So I don't know why this is making me do this again.
And then can I bookmark the page somehow?
Yes, you can. And it's also linked at the bottom of here. So it's this one at the bottom of our activity guide.
And can I download the activity guide?
Yes, you can. Definitely, you can save that. So this is what will happen when you go to the site, and you can scroll through, and it has different instructions and sections and how you move through the different sections. And so you just kind of move through it that way.
And when you're not here sharing the screen with me, how do I get to this? How do I get to this screen?
So it was, if I go back a little bit.
It's in the Google chat. I mean, sorry, in the Zoom chat. Do you see the Zoom chat?
Okay. I feel like the slow student who came in like the dog.
There's so many windows. We understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Zoom chat. Yeah.
I've saved the chat. I can find it then. Thank you very much.
I just put it at the bottom too for you. Okay.
Thank you.
I see that Anurima has a question. Anurima?
Yes, I know that some of these questions are very field specific, so I apologize if they're not super general, but I hope this one will be in any case. I have a question. I know it's a lot of challenging things that the students have to navigate at this time and that faculty also have to navigate at this time. So I'm wondering how to promote a sense of rigor on the syllabus as well. I know it won't be the same as in other contexts, but still to communicate that besides giving them all the resources and welcoming language and so on, that they also are expected to be responsible in more ways now for their education. So I'm thinking particularly of deep reading skills, promoting that, and promoting still maintaining rigor in their studies. Those are the two specific things I had questions about.
Yeah. Are you teaching first years?
I am. I teach all levels of undergraduate students, dance and performance theory, so a lot of aesthetic theory, and I also teach graduate students.
Yeah, I asked because I think one of the things that we sometimes forget when we teach first years is that it's really 13th grade, right? And they haven't even yet learned how to learn in college and how to be self-regulated in their learning, which I think is a little bit of what you're saying. And so,
Okay.
you know, trying to really be explicit about that in your syllabus or, you know, on your first day of class, how it's different now learning in college than it is learning in high school, and how you are expected to be more responsible for your learning. And here are ways that you can do that. And one of the things that went on in the chat, we were talking about a guide for students, and we shared the Michigan guide. But the idea of sharing with your students how to study best, right? All the research, you know, around different study skills and how to practice using them and how to assess your own learning, how to figure out what you know and what you don't know. And that, you know, that is something they have to learn. Those are skills they have to learn, and that you have these resources that you can share with them, and that it's your expectation that they do become self-regulated learners, right? And independent in how they are learning, but to also realize that these are skills they have to learn, right? That they may not be there yet.
Okay. That's helpful. And just to emphasize that, what about skills for deep reading in particular?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We're STEM focused. So I don't off the top of my head know of any, but I would consult with writing programs. And actually, Laurel Westrup is a great resource. Katie, do you have her email offhand? You can share. And they might have some really great resources on that.
Thank you so much. I actually find that when students from South Campus do come into my classes, they're very diligent about reading. So that's
good.
not an issue I've experienced with them.
I'm not so sure about the writing skills, but maybe their reading skills might be better.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Lisa, for guiding me
Thanks
to
for your
those
questions.
resources. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I just put Laurel's email in the chat.
Oh, great. Yeah, Laurel Westrup at humnet.ucla.edu.
Great. Thank you. I will be leaving now, and thank you so much for your help and for your guidance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm here. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you so much. Again, this was wonderful. I love this session.
Oh, good.
Talking about equity, I taught a course in the spring with over 180 students, and many of them really didn't have access to proper technology. And I know there were resources, but the students didn't know, and maybe it was limited. Many of them in the middle of quarter contacted me. I cannot hear you. My internet is very weak and all of that. I was wondering if you know about resources for the fall quarter that we can let the students know in a timely manner.
About technology?
Yes. Technology and internet access and things like that.
So I think, so Katie just put a link in the chat for the student guidebook.
Okay.
And so that has information there. The library is doing loans for students. And so they should be able to get both laptops and Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi. And there are Wi-Fi hotspots that they are loaning students or giving to students. So those should take care of the technology issues.
Yeah. The second link I put in there has specific information about technology resources. And so that should have some of the things that might be able to help.
Okay, are there like free providers of internet? Like, let's say there's a student in Riverside who can't come to campus.
I think they will send them a Wi-Fi hotspot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
excellent.
They're called like MiFis or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'll send it to them. They'll ship it to them. So it doesn't matter where they are physically.
Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I see you again soon. I'm going
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope so. Thank you.
Next session.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.